Thank you all for joining us today. Really glad to have you all here. And so I think the common thread with this panel here is that we have 4 companies really represented by 3 people that are all vying to be the local version of an internet giant, right? We have Yelp, we have Zappos, more or less. We have OfficeFab with Staples.com. What's the closest parallel, maybe?
Staples.com.
Staples.com. And then Lazada, of course, Amazon. But we have, sort of very different machinations going on in the background in that we have 2 from Rocket, which is the global startup incubator juggernaut that invests largely in developing markets. And then we have Bryan, who is an entrepreneur working on his own to try, with his partner, to try and acquire funding and get started. Very apropos after our last panel. So you're working on your seed funding right now. So can you guys just really quickly introduce your businesses, talk about your business models, and like when you got started in this market? Bryan, you want to start on the end?
Sure. Great. So I'm the co-founder of 88 Mangoes. We are starting as a carbon copy of Yelp, which started in the US and has grown internationally. 88 Mangoes is an online directory with a review board and a community atmosphere. Oh, more? Can you hear me? Okay. So I'll just repeat quickly. 88 Mangoes is an online directory with a review board in a community atmosphere, and it has kind of a Pinoy twist. So we're having a lot of fun with the marketing and branding. We're in startup, and so we're still in beta stage. And our goal is to replicate the Yelp market in the Philippines and to create a culture that will be received well in the Philippines, and create an atmosphere where people can have a good time, a fun interaction, where they can meet other people, earn points. We have a strategic contribute and win program where every time a member does anything within the community, they get points, which are redeemable, and they can earn different prizes and basically translate their time and energy on the community into tangible items. We're currently now finally looking for funding, so we're looking for seed funding, and within 1 year, we will be looking for venture capital. So everything that they just described has been heavenly to my ears, because that's exactly where we are, and looking forward to having some follow-up conversations with each of the men that were up here earlier.
Okay, great. Bryan?
Yeah, so as Dave mentioned, I'm the managing director for Zalora Philippines. I particularly focus on the operation side of things. So Zalora is the fashion vertical e-commerce company of Rocket Internet, which is present in 8 countries across Southeast Asia, Philippines being one of them. The company turns a year old tomorrow, actually. So we turned the site on Feb 29 last year. So technically, we only turn one year every 4 years. So, and it's been a very, very educational ride from a year back. I mean, looking back from where we started our warehouse was a basement of the building, of the old spa building on Jupiter Street. And now we have a 2,500 square meter warehouse, which is quickly running out of space. We are the largest fashion e-commerce site here in the country, with over 30,000 SKUs, items on the site, with over 200,000 pieces of merchandise in our warehouse. We've been growing consistently month to month, and I think the Philippines is not there yet in terms of where the US was when Zappos launched, but we're slowly headed there. And hearing the other panelists, I'm also a very bullish. I also have a very bullish perspective on where the Philippines is heading. I mean, you see demand there. It's just really in our ability to service that demand.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. So my name is Charlie. As Dave was saying, I'm managing director at Rocket Internet, working with Bryan. So I'm here to talk about the other 2 ventures. Lazada.com.ph is essentially the Amazon.com for the Philippines. It's currently the largest B2C e-commerce player in the Philippines. and OfficeFab.com.ph is the staples.com for the Philippines. Essentially, a B2B player servicing office supplies and other goods to businesses in the Philippines. So Lazada started in pretty much around the same time as Zalora, actually. So we've actually shared offices at the Jupiter, the Spa. Humble beginnings there. And it's now grown to around 200 employees. And growth's been very strong on that front. OfficeFab was started around 8 months ago. It's now at around 60 employees and servicing many, many businesses across a number of verticals in the Philippines, from their office supplies to their electronics, their furniture, and other goods as well.
Okay, excellent. Let's see. Could each of you possibly give some examples of what your lessons have learned have been in this sort of time since you've entered the market, which is apparently no more than 1 year? Can everyone hear me? This mic sounds so quiet. Yeah, so in this past year, what are sort of your lessons learned? Bonus points for admitting a stumble or a mistake of some kind, and you know, what you learned from it or how you overcame it. Bryan, do you want to start?
I think the biggest lessons that we've learned so far is things tend to take a little bit longer here than what we've been used to. My partner is German, I'm American. And so there's been a learning curve on how fast it takes to get from point A to point B. And there's been some hard lessons on expectations from the businesses that we're connecting to and what we can receive from them, what's expected. Something that we had to do for a U-turn, which is always difficult if you're down your journey and realize that you're going down the wrong road, was that we decided to, instead of approaching funding early as a concept, we decided to build out our community, which is a large one, because we're going to be hosting every business in the Philippines, and the ability to host reviews in a community. So we had to build a technology platform that would be, you know, down the road for millions of users, and all of that interaction and capability. So at one point we had to stop and start over and go back to the drawing boards and redesign on a new platform. But we knew that that was the right decision. And so in that time that we turned around, we decided that that would be best to have a proven concept for IT, for the ability for monetization, and the interaction capability for marketing. And that's when we decided to build it out and then go for funding 6 to 9 months down the road.
I guess for me, you know, coming from a very different starting point, what I realized over the past year is that, you know, being aggressive really has like it's two sides of the same coin. You can either be very successful with it or really fail and fall flat in your face with it. So unlike Bryan, we were fortunate enough to have the funding required from day one. We were really aggressive in the way we wanted to build the business. We grew from 0 to 100 employees in, I think, a month and a half. There were also elements, you know, I've heard logistics being mentioned as one of the key factors that hinders e-commerce growth here in the Philippines, and I agree to that. And at the start, we realized that, and we wanted to put things into our favor and offer something that other e-commerce sites at that time did not offer, which was cash and delivery. So we were very aggressive in that. We hired our own riders. We built our own fleet. I have a fleet of around 15 to 20 riders in Metro Manila delivering my packages. And that fleet costs me around 40 to 50% lower than what it would cost me if I used a third-party logistics provider. Also allows me to do cash and delivery, same-day delivery, a lot of other things that other e-commerce companies which don't have their own last-mile fulfillment cannot do. On the flip side, we're also very aggressive in wanting to build a tech team here in the Philippines. We set up a sort of like an outsourcing center that handled photo retouching, content writing, website development that would handle multiple ventures across the Rocket universe. That grew from 0 to around 300 employees in, say, 3 months, and 300 to 0 employees in another 4 months. There was an issue with talent, with demand, with internal politics. So, you know, I mean, this is all public knowledge. It's not uncommon with the aggression that Rocket has when building businesses. So, you know, you just have to pick the right battles. And if I had to bootstrap it, I wouldn't do it the way we did. But again, I'm not saying that it was the right approach at every step. But something that you have to keep in mind is that every decision you take, you just need to be committed to it when you make that decision. Things can happen, things will fall apart later on, but at least you're not going to kick yourself in the head and say, you know, why did I go down this route? Because you had very strong justifications and choices and reasoning when you made that choice at that time.
Not to interrupt there, but I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned bringing your logistics in-house, because we've had a lot of discussion about logistics so far, and I don't think that option has really been discussed. And so, I mean, that's really great that you're able to achieve those additional margins by doing it yourself. Also, was Zalora at one point targeting something with multiple distribution hubs, or is that?
We do have multiple distribution. We have 2 in Metro Manila now, and as we grow, because with logistics, it's really about density to make logistics cost more efficient. Right now, we don't have enough density yet, but we're getting there. And once we have more and more density, we can start building hubs across Manila and later on outside of Manila.
And what's your guaranteed delivery time now?
Right now, if you order, it's before 6, right? So if you order now, you can get it tomorrow in Metro Manila.
That's very impressive. Okay.
At the start, when we were at the basement, we had a 3-hour delivery guarantee.
And did that work out?
It worked out for 2 days. And then we realized that it wasn't feasible.
Cool. Charlie?
I'd say that the 2 biggest learnings and challenges, one would be culture, and 2 would be around something related to that in terms of people. So for culture, I think there was 2 fronts. There was the, first of all, as Bryan was alluding to, Rocket has a very unique culture. It's a very, very fast-paced, rapid iteration culture where it's very demanding of its people. Now, I actually grew up in Australia where we're very, very laid back, and that's something similar that we share to the Philippines. And so synchronizing that culture and bridging the 2 was actually a big challenge. So the biggest lesson that I guess me and my team learned there was around communication. That the Filipino team that we do have, they can run a rapid and leading edge race in the e-commerce business. It's just that they need to have that vision and that constant communication to guide them, and they've done a great job on that. And then the second point relates to that as well, which was that before coming to the Philippines, I had a lot of people telling me about sort of doubts in terms of the technical expertise, for example, of the talent and the people here. But we've been proven wrong at OfficeFab especially, for example, where we've actually really been surprised on the upside in terms of the quality of the talent.
Have you had like a lot of success with that right off the bat? I mean, I will personally admit to had challenges here. The people I've had who are great, but I've learned that I at least have difficulty in an interview assessing whether or not someone will work out. And oftentimes I've only succeeded by trial and error. How has your experience been in terms of hiring here?
Let me start from the end in terms of the lesson based on all the experience. The biggest lesson I think that I've drawn from this hiring, this big hiring frenzy that we've done at Rocket, is to always go for the AAA first and hire slowly on that front. Take your time and really don't settle on anyone else but a AAA candidate. because it's so much harder if you don't go to the top of the talent pool to be able to assess the quality of the candidates from there on in. So high top down.
Don't look for diamonds in the rough.
Yeah.
Look for diamonds in the diamonds.
In the diamonds.
Yeah. Oh, go.
I have a couple more that I thought of. One I would like to share that I think will be helpful for anyone that ever has the opportunity speaking to, whether it's your staff or a large group of people. Whenever you do a presentation, make sure that your zipper is up. Because I recently did a presentation in front of a large group and mine apparently was not, so that was a very shy moment. The other is I had the honor and privilege of doing workshops and working closely with Anthony Pangilinan locally. And one of the talks that he did recently taught and encouraged that you hire 3 people. It's the 3-4-5 plan. So you hire 3 people, pay them the value of 4, and invest and work with them expecting the results of 5. And I think that there might be a common mistake here in the Philippines with the BPO outsourcing world of lower labor rates, that I've seen some of my friends' companies here where they're doing the opposite. They're doing the 5-4-3 plan. And so that's something that we're doing from out of the gates, and it's been very successful.
Actually, Dave, let me just add one more thing in terms of a valuable lesson. There was a bit of talk in the previous panel about sort of the service providers and the infrastructure in the Philippines for e-commerce not quite being there, but slowly but surely getting to the place that it needs to be. The lesson drawn from our experience on that front has been to really be very proactive in working with your service providers. So particularly this applies to the e-commerce field. But A, build very strong relationships, but 2, be very proactive in thinking about how you can help your partners and your service providers evolve to this next, this next phase of commerce. One example I'll give is with our suppliers, for example. So we deal with multiple suppliers, and typically their delivery times are not as sort of urgent as what they would be for e-commerce. And they simply didn't have the processes, the inventory management, technology, and know-how to be able to fulfill. So when we initially started, we didn't really take much of a proactive approach. It was really sort of a bargaining approach where we sort of said, look, get your act together or else we cut you. But that didn't work out very well. And what we learned was that we actually had to invest our time, our expertise, and sit down with them and really help them build out systems that would help them help us, essentially.
Okay. Now, all of your companies share sort of an interesting commonality, I think, in that you're all going after businesses that aren't necessarily profitable right away. You know, in the last panel, we talked a little bit about going for that unit cost approach to pitching a business. Here we've got, on one hand, the Samwers, who often show a lot of interest in investing heavily in a market to try and get things like eyeballs or revenues or all these indicators of profitability that people weight over profitability early on, which seems counterintuitive. And Bryan, your business is sort of a social community, which, the revenue streams from that are not always immediately intuitive in terms of seeing an initial return on your investment. So, from those perspectives, business is inherently about the pursuit of profit. How do you feel about entering businesses or trying to build businesses that don't necessarily follow that aim?
Okay, number one, when you're entering a business region or a market like this where it's a long-term play, you have to be comfortable and know and accept that going into it. So when we built the strategy for 88 Mangoes, we knew that it was going to be a long-term business model. Our goal is to monetize as fast as possible, but we want to monetize when the timing's right organically and when it makes sense for everyone involved. Of course, it needs to be profitable. I want that, and our investors are going to need that. So We've developed multiple different revenue streams instead of depending on one or just the traditional. And we're just planning that in part of the strategy.
And I guess for us, it certainly did start that way. But the company has gone through many phases under the guidance of the regional team, Ollie, Mark, somewhere. So let me just describe what I mean. At the start, the key metric for Zalora was number of SKUs we got online. We launched with 5,000 SKUs. We put 5,000 SKUs up online in 3 weeks. So we launched with that. After that, it became the number of orders. So acquire an order at any cost. Free delivery, 3-hour delivery, vouchers left and right, no minimum spend. It got to that level. And then quickly after that, it got to a level where we said, okay, now let's focus on profitability. So I can say right now we're looking at profitability without marketing costs. So every order that goes out needs to have a positive contribution margin.
Is that online marketing or online and offline?
Both online and offline. But we also look closely at acquisition costs per subscriber and customer lifetime value. So I mean, all these metrics on profitability are certainly a top concern at this point. But like with any startup, it's about acquiring customers at the start. Less so for us because we don't really have that big of network effects as does a Facebook or Yelp type startup. For us, it's really every package that goes out needs to be profitable after shipping costs. Again.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that Bryan said. I'll just say one other thing. I guess more in the context of Rocket Ventures in general. Well, first of all, Rocket's in the business of building businesses and selling businesses. And at the heart of any business is profitability. So it's something that we care about a lot. To characterize the evolution of a lot of the businesses within the Rocket portfolio, I would say that a lot of them sort of have the mandate to go out and grow as fast as they can in 6 to 12 months. Then in the next 12 months, to really look at profitability and unit economics. And then in the following 12 months, to really focus and hone in on the exit strategy. Obviously, the exit strategy is thought about the whole way through, whether it's sort of kept on as a profitable business or sold through a trade deal or IPO even. But yeah, I'd say that's sort of like the typical evolution. But profitability is definitely something that we look at really carefully.
Okay, thank you for the color on that. All right, just for my Rocket guys. So the Samwer brothers are famous/infamous for their colorful ways of expressing themselves and their somewhat radical management techniques. Things are often leaked to the press. I briefly was working directly for them as well within a public company. So I got some exposure, but not much. What are your favorite Ollie Samwer stories, if you have any that you can share? Feel free to censor yourself if need be.
You do know he's our boss, right?
Any delightfully pleasant ones that fall on the I'm sure there's a spectrum of them. Just can you cherry pick any that you might be able to share in this format?
After a few drinks.
Okay. All right.
Just between you and us.
All right.
I mean, we're all from the Ollie School of Hard Knocks, I guess. So, I'll share one, and this is more of my perception of the guy rather than a particular story. I had the pleasure of meeting Ollie twice, I think, and Mark also a couple of times. They'd come to the region, they do the roadshow, they look across all Zaloras. And I guess what I'd say is that the way the culture, the Rocket culture, is really a reflection of how they live their lives. They're so aggressive and they're so on edge all the time. And it's clear what they want, which is something that I admire. It's clear, it's their money, so I'm just working for the man. And the way they want the MDs to run the business is really a reflection of how they see things and how they've made their money in the past. It's really all about execution. It's about speed. Because the idea, the idea can be copied. E-commerce is it's not a new thing. It's a new thing in this part of the world in the way we are executing it. That's because it's coming directly from how they see it's supposed to be run. So no compromises.
Okay, that's a lesson that you take with you. Okay, I was looking for something a little more colorful, but we'll leave it at there, understanding that you are employed by them. All right. Also for the Rocket guys, given your opportunity to helm fairly large businesses here and grow them very quickly and get exposed to so many suppliers and end clients in a very short period of time, I really think working for Rocket or similar is a spectacular opportunity, a great crash course in business. Negotiating 5,000 SKUs in 3 weeks. I mean, those you don't get that anywhere else that I can think of, or it's very hard to imagine. What would you take away from this? What is the most important things that you've learned? What about this market is unique? What are the most memorable things that come to mind, given that sort of unique experience?
So I'd actually done a startup before, and in terms of just contrasting my experience there and my time at Rocket, the biggest difference is obviously the amount of capital that you have to put to work and the expectations that are behind you. But at the heart of it, I think a lot of the core priorities are still the same. And the first one really is the people, whether it was the startup that I'd worked on before with 30 employees, or with Lazada and OfficeFab in the Philippines. There was two things about people, in my opinion, that are very, very important in terms of managing a venture. One is to hire the best and not to compromise. Two is really to foster the right environment for open communication. And tied to that is the idea of synchronization. So I've had, through the experience of Rocket, a bit more of the opportunity to practice this idea of synchronization. And what I really mean by that is, how do you answer the question of getting 200 employees to always be, to synchronize, and to be focused on the delight of the customer? How do you do that? And there's a number of sort of tactics that I think I've learned, but the most useful one that has come about is one that I borrowed from Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter and Square. And that is the power of narrative and communication to the team. So what Jack Dorsey does is every time that they come out with a particular product or marketing idea, he writes out the entire narrative of what that user experience is meant to be and how that will be fulfilled. He writes the story. So in our context, for example, if we want a marketing strategy to target the verticals of schools, for example, for the OfficeFab business, we will write out that entire story. So from the marketing point of view, we'll say that we're targeting Bob, the teacher, for example, or the purchasing officer, and who is Bob? What does Bob do? And why is he relevant to our business as a customer? And all the way through to the product and the service that we offer, we'll write that narrative down. Everyone in the team is expected to read that narrative. But the reason why that helps is because everyone in the team is able to synchronize on the same story and understand how they fit in. And that's probably a lesson that I wish I'd learned a lot earlier in my startup experience, but one that I think I could have only learned with the resources of Rocket, having managed such a big team.
Yeah, for me, it's also something to do with people. Like I mentioned a while ago, we grew from nothing to over 100, at some point 200 employees in a course of 3 to 6 months. And as you're growing that quickly and at that level, you tend to forget what culture means. you're only focused about, I need to hire another buyer, I need to hire another warehouse staff. Oh, more orders are coming in. Who's gonna pack that? Who's gonna pick that? Who's gonna deliver that? So you're caught up in the whirlwind of what we know as a rocket venture, and culture gets put to the wayside. You forget about what drives people. At one point, when we moved warehouses, our service delivery was so bad. It made me ashamed to say it was from Zalora, because people would come up to me and say, "Hey, I ordered 5 days ago. Where's my order?" It got to that level. What I did is I went to customer service. I printed out all the customer complaints, and I made every one of my warehouse guys read it out loud to each other. It was like a AA group. And I asked them how they felt, and they all felt bad, because deep down inside, they knew what they were there for. They were there for serving the customer, and they were there because we wanted to build. They were there because we wanted to build a company with excellent customer service, which is what we mentioned to them when we hired them. But somewhere along the way, growing that fast, you tend to forget that. Now, what I would do differently is I would occasionally just step back and just think about the whole thing. Think about everything from strategy to culture. You don't get a lot of that alone time for yourself because you're always busy trying to chase the next peso to pay for your employees, to make your investors happy. So some startups may have that luxury, but for us, we're day in, day out. We're always in the grind. So I would really sort of encourage people who get caught up in that to just pause for a bit and step back and try and take perspective of everything and start to think about, are my employees happy? If they're happy, then they'll work for you. They'll serve your customers better in the end. So for me, that was the main thing.
All right, Bryan, and one for you. So you're in the process of hunting down seed funding. You have a product that you believe in. How are you going about it? So,
What we did was we started with our direct networks, and we just made a list of people that we thought might be potential angel investors or seed investors. And we put together our presentation pack and slide deck and just started having conversations with people. Actually, we're in that process right now. The second thing we did was started researching locally different groups like Idea Space that existed, and put that into a list of people. And then the third step is attending and participating and being a part of events like this, and networking and adding to that pipeline. And tomorrow I'll be having conversations with Isaac.
Okay. All right. At this point, maybe we can open it up to the floor for questions. Does anyone have questions for our distinguished panel?
Hey, so my question's for the Rocket guys. So Rocket Internet, not just in the Philippines, but elsewhere in Southeast Asia and around the world, is just a force in e-commerce because you have a significant amount of capital. It allows you to hire really, really good people. I understand profitability will become the focus, but it's not the immediate focus, so therefore you have some flexibility about how you operate the business. And it's a proven model. It seems to be going well. So I'm curious, not to give away secrets to the rest, but like when you look at the ecosystem, obviously it's not just going to be Rocket Internet. It's not going to be the only e-commerce company in any of these markets. And in many ways, you guys are seeding the market for growth for other people to follow. So, for the other people who don't have, Swedish retailers backing them and stuff like this, $100 million of capital, what are the opportunities to sort of follow on for the path that you have trailblazed? Let me put it another way. If you were going to leave Rocket and do your own e-commerce startup, where's the next opportunities due in part to what you guys have already done?
It's going to be very hard to try and compete with someone who wants to get 90% market share. Like, if I did leave Rocket, I'd be left with breadcrumbs. But I mean, similar to what I think you said a while ago when you were up here, an opportunity that I see is really in the periphery of e-commerce. The guys who make the most money out of what Rocket's doing is Google, because of all the online marketing we're spending, and the logistics companies, because of all the provincial deliveries that we have to do. And I don't think, since I handle operations, I'm more knowledgeable about that side. We're not there yet in terms, especially the Philippines, we're not there yet in terms of the ability to service customers the way a USPS in the US services the customers. Both in terms of cost. Philippines is one of the highest logistics cost country, even higher than Indonesia. And in terms of delivery options, be it cash on delivery for the provinces, be it deferred shipping options, is what I always try and push with my third party, JRS knows. What I try and push with my logistics partners, to be able to give me options that I can give customers. I want to be able to offer free delivery because we're seeding the market, we're growing the market. And people right now are just not, why would they pay for something to be delivered to them if they can go to the mall across the street? They don't factor in that cost, but they do for e-commerce. So I still want to be able to offer free delivery, but that kills my profitability. So what I'm looking for is a logistics partner who can say, okay, here's a cheaper price, but it gets to the customer in 4 days. Right now, everyone I talk to, here's the price, it gets to the customer next day. What can I do? I need to charge the customer. So I see a lot of opportunity there in the periphery, especially when it comes to operations, shared warehousing services, 3PL, that builds a platform to allow other smaller startups, e-commerce startups in certain verticals to function properly without getting killed on costs and without having to pass on that cost to the consumer, thereby limiting the market.
Yeah, I again agree with Bryan there on the idea of the periphery service opportunities. I think one other thing to add to that is I do think there is opportunities in e-commerce still. And the case in point, I think, is if you look at America, there's still a lot of thriving e-commerce companies beyond Amazon, Zappos, Staples. And the obvious place to look there would be in the verticals, right? So I still think that if you, if you're keen on entering the e-commerce space, there is plenty of opportunity, and I think that would add and help Rocket in some way, because at the end of the day, I mean, this is an ecosystem, and the focus right now in the Philippines is to grow the market, not to necessarily win all the market share. So yeah.
Thanks. Any other questions from the floor?
I believe we have a text-in question.
Okay. I'll read it aloud. What made you decide against outsourcing your logistics?
Let me just make it clear. We still do outsource our logistics to the provinces. But for Metro Manila, we run our own logistics fleet. I'm not particularly against outsourcing logistics if you can give me the prices that that are equivalent to my costs, even slightly higher. And yeah, I guess it boils down to cost and servicing, because I know with my own fleet, I get updates at the end of the day. When I tried outsourcing with other fleets, I get updates 2 days later. So the customer calls, asks what happens. I can't respond because I don't know what happened. So it's really in the connectivity between the third-party logistics provider and us, as well as the cost right now of sending a package through a third-party guy. Because I know the third-party logistics couriers now have better density than we do. They do 50 packages per rider, 30, 50 packages. I don't even do 20, but my costs are half of the special rates that I already get. I'm not particularly against it, but if you have the scale that we're operating at, because I also help Lazada with their fleet, then it makes sense for me to run my own fleet.
Do you guys partner up with Lazadas for on your shipping? Like, do Lazada packages and Zalora packages go out together?
Yes.
I'll just add one thing in the B2B context. So for OfficeFab.com.ph, which as I said was essentially trying to be the Staples.com for Philippines, the customer lifetime value of any of our clients, which are businesses, is very, very high. So we might not acquire as many customers, but each one is worth a lot more. And so the risk that we're willing to take of potentially disappointing that customer is a lot less tolerable. So we actually choose to in-house some of our logistics as well to make sure that we can deliver. One case in point, for example, is if one of our clients recently ordered 500 chairs, right? But they wanted it very, very soon for a particular conference that they were doing. And so, if we had been 1 day late, that would have been a very, very upset customer and wouldn't have come back. So, and that customer's value obviously would have been very high over the period of its lifetime.
Sorry, one more thing to add. Customers here in the Philippines, when they shop e-commerce, they think it's a personal delivery service right now. They do special day deliveries. We'd get there the next day, they don't have the money to pay for it because they thought we were coming 2 days later. Then they say, oh, why don't you, I'll order now, but come on the 15th when it's payday. So they right now, it's still a high touch type of market. You need to still educate them on delivery procedures, processes. If they want something picked up, they want it picked up now. I can't do that with a third-party logistics provider. I need to have control over that last mile because that's my only touch point, my only physical touch point with the customer. Everything else happens in the web. There's no face to it.
Okay. Anyone else? Cherry.
I'm sorry, Cherry Miguel here again, Chiquibo Marketing. Zalora and Lazada, you're very, very good in talking right now here, this stage as we speak, right? But you've got a very, very poor service when it comes to customer service, shipping, and delivery. So you said you're good in from start to finish, but do you talk with your employees? I mean, in regards to shipping the products?
I spend every day in the warehouse and I ship products myself once a week to customers just to meet who buys from Zalora.
Okay, I never bought there though I never buy anything yet in your store, Zalora, but I did buy from Lazada like 3 weeks ago and I had a very bad experience. I bought a TV like
Charlie.
40. I'm sorry about that. I mean, you're a nice guy.
Thank you.
I bought a 43 inches Samsung TV, and then there's no disclosure in regards to the credit card, right? So I think you need more disclosures when there's a payment, because after I paid through my credit card, the guy called me after 2 or 3 days and said, can I have your front and back of your credit card? I said, you can't do that. How can you do that?
Well,
so there's something inside that it's like fraud scam of the credit card. I don't like that. That's an invasion of privacy. You can't do that.
well, first of all, I mean, fraud is something that is very, very important to us. So we do take very stringent measures, particularly with high-value goods, to protect against that. But I think the bigger question and point is that, are you a perfect company, right? And I should be very candid about that. I think to zoom out of everything here, right, we've been in the market for around 1 year, shipping hundreds of orders a day. And so there's inevitably going to be mishaps along the way. The thing that's a given. The most important thing for us is thinking about how do we constantly improve.
No, that's not my question. You have to answer my question.
Right. Sorry, can you repeat exactly
Why
what?
do you ask the front and back of the credit card?
I can try and answer that question. At one point, our fraud numbers were at around 10-15% of all credit card transactions, and customers were complaining to us. Not customers who shopped with us, the card holders of the guys who got defrauded were complaining to us, saying, "Hey, I never purchased anything from Zalora. Why are you charging me this? Why are you charging me that?" So we had to put measures in place. It's not just to protect us, but also to protect the credit card holders out there, because we don't know for a fact. Unfortunately, Philippines, Indonesia, even Malaysia, I think, are countries with very high credit card fraud rates. And even when you book an airline ticket, when I get to the counter, they ask for my credit card. I don't know if asking for the front and the back was standard procedure.
Cherry, also, I might just ask one question.
Go ahead,
Is your
go
card
ahead.
a foreign credit card? by
No,
any chance?
it's actually a platinum East-West Bank.
East West is local. Okay. I just know that many online buying sites or similar have to take especially strict measures with foreign credit cards or reject them entirely. Yeah.
Yeah, it was more of. I mean, it's not meant to invade on your privacy, because you can block out the the CVV code. We just need to see your signature and your name and an ID.
But
Actually,
at least you have to put, before you enter the credit card, name, Visa, blah, blah, blah. I think you have to put a disclosure that after this, you have to give us the front and back of your credit card.
then that
It's
might
not there.
then that might make you not click on the confirm button.
I personally think it's good that those things happen, because I've been a victim of fraud, identity theft before, and it's a real hassle when you have to go through months of painful paperwork and getting your corrections done. It adjusts your credit score. So if I ever receive a phone call or anything like that, I personally think it's great of a company to do that, because it's protecting us.
I think Fred wants to weigh in here.
Excuse me, Fred. For the sake of time management, this is going to be the last question from Fred, okay?
Yeah, actually,
Because
that was an ending question. Just to complete your answer, and maybe also to enlighten everybody, Visa and MasterCard have some chargeback ratio, meaning based on the number of chargeback that you are doing, when there is a fraud who is detected, they decide if you keep or not the possibility to propose credit card payment on your website. So it's not BDO or even AsiaPay or whatever, it's directly the credit card. So from a business point of view, personally, I make the same thing than you and request the two elements. From a consumer point of view, I'm agree with you. Even if some customers are not comfortable with that, I think the majority are okay with that. But also on a business point of view, the worst thing for any e-commerce website would be to lose its ability to propose Visa or MasterCard. So now just my question was, as you were saying, you are here since only 1 year. You did a lot already. So OfficeFab, Zalora, Lazada. What's the strategy of Rocket for the, I will not ask you the 3 coming years, because I'm sure no one has a clue, but at least for the 12 coming months, what can we expect from Rocket and from these 3 properties?
I can't speak for Rocket in general. I don't know what goes on all these minds. But for Zalora at least, and I guess for the other verticals currently in the market, it's really to be the market leader. And when we say market leader, is to have lion's share, 80-90% of the market, with the eye on profitability. But other than that, it's really to make the most of the regional structure of the Rocket Ventures, and use that as leverage to be able to get the best brands, the best talent, the best processes laid out across all the countries.
Yeah, I think that applies to Lazada and OfficeFab as well. Basically, to continue to grow, but going back to what I was saying in terms of the evolution cycle of a lot of rocket ventures. Obviously, for Lazada, a lot of the focus right now is on unit economics as well as profitability. OfficeFab is still within its sort of like growth zone, and so acquiring customers and growing basket sizes. In terms of Rocket in general, each week there's ventures that the Rocket MDs will talk about with Ollie, and so those ventures will talk in the context and intersection of the different countries around the world, and you know, there have been a few that have been touted for the Philippines, so there may be some to come in 2013, but that's not for sure. Sorry?
Some other.
Yeah, some others in the pipeline.
It's big news.
No more,
or
no
not.
more daily deal spaces, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Dave, maybe you can wrap it up.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for all our panelists. Can we have a round of applause for everybody?